Hello and welcome to a video for year 6 about proportion and ratio. Starting with proportion. So when we're talking about proportion, we're talking about fractions. A proportion is a fraction. Here's a picture of some fractions. You know 5/10 is the same size as 1/2. It takes up as much space in a circle, 5/10 as 1/2. If you simplify 5/10, you get a half. Those numbers are simpler. They look smaller when really they're the same size, but they look simpler, they look smaller than these numbers. When we are doing proportion, we have to simplify our fractions. At the bottom now, I'm going to show you really the computer way of writing fractions. 5/10 can be written like this, 1/2 can be written like this. That's how I'm going to write them today. So for a half, we can say 1/2, or we could say a half, couldn't we? Let's start doing proportion. What proportion of the circles are blue? So count the blue circles and then count the total number of circles. Then we'll make a fraction, which is a proportion. 2 are blue out of 5. There's 5, isn't there? And 2 of them are blue. So that is what proportion is. What proportion are blue? 2 out of every 5. 2/5 is how we say it as a fraction. And proportion is fraction. Proportions are fractions. Next one. What proportion of the circles are yellow? Let's just move this out of the way for you. Count the yellow ones and count the total, and you'll get a fraction. Did you get 4/9? 4/9 is the answer. 4 are yellow, and there's 9 in total. Next one. What proportion of the circles are green? Can you do it before I say? 2 out of 7 are green. So you get the idea with proportion. You count how many are green, or whatever you asked for. In this case, you asked for the green ones. You count how many are green, and you count the total. 2/7. Next one. What proportion of the circles are green this time? Did you get 5 out of 10? 5/10? However, with proportion, we have to write the fraction in its simplest form. And 5/10 has a simpler form, as you saw right at the start of the video. 5/10 is the same as a half, isn't it? You could look at those circles and say half of them are green, because that's true. Half of them are green. So you simplify the 5/10 into a half. So this is a proportion. Half is a proportion. It's a fraction. Same thing, really, in this case. Next slide. What proportion of the circles are green? 3 out of 9. Can we simplify this? You can, because both those numbers are in the 3 times table. So if you divide them both by 3, you'll get the simplified version. If you do 3 divided by 3, that's 1. If you do 9 divided by 3, that's 3. 1/3. That's the simplified version of 3/9. So that's our answer. 1/3 of them are green. 1 out of every 3. You could say 1 in every 3 circles are green. Next bit. What proportion of the circles are blue? Count carefully. Six out of 15. 6/15. But we got to simplify if we can. We can simplify this because both numbers are in the 3 times table. Divide them both by 3 and you'll get a simplified fraction. 6 divided by 3 is 2. 15 divided by 3 is 5. 2/5, 2 out of 5. So we can say 2/5 of the circles are blue. 2 out of 5 circles are blue. 2 in every 5 circles are blue. We can say all those things. Next one. What proportion of the clouds are grey? This won't take long. 4 out of 8. You can simplify that, can't you? They both divide by 4. Half of the clouds are grey. And you know in daily life that people will say things like this. If they looked at the sky, they probably wouldn't say 4 out of 8 clouds are grey. They might just say half of the clouds are grey. People often simplify it in their daily lives. What's next? Lots of counting here. What proportion of the moons are yellow? Did you get 5 out of 20? or maybe you've already simplified, because you have to simplify this one. They're both in the 5 times table. Divide both those numbers by 5, and you'll get a simpler version. 1/4, 1 out of 4. 5 divided by 5 was 1. 20 divided by 5 is 4. So if someone asks you what proportion of the moons are yellow, well, it's 5 out of 20, but we have to simplify when we're doing proportion. So we'll say 1 out of 4 are yellow. I'll show you how this works now. We've said 1 out of every 4 are yellow. So if I get, let's see, if I get 4, one of them's yellow, okay? Now that should work all the way across if this is correct. If 1 out of 4 is correct, I should be able to do this. Even though the order might be a bit funny, they're not in a perfect order. If I find 3 white ones and 1 yellow one and put them together, this should work all the way through. 3 white ones and 1 yellow one, because that's 1 out of 4, isn't it? That's 1 yellow out of 4. And it works here as well. Because we can really, you can see how we really can say 1 out of every 4 are yellow. It's true. You can see it. You can see it with the circles around the moons, that 1 out of every 4 are yellow. That's proportion. Let's clear that off and move on. This is a word problem to do with proportion. The pictures are not here anymore now. We're going to have to do things the opposite way round. I'm actually going to need the pen back. So 20 fruits are in a bowl. 1 in every 5 is an apple. They've given you a fraction there, haven't they? 1 in every 5. 1 in every 5. That's how we write fractions in our maths book, isn't it? 1 in every 5 is an apple. How many are apples? Well, 1 in every 5 is an apple. Thing is, there's 20 fruits. So we need to now do the opposite of simplifying. There is 20 fruits. So how many will be apples? That's going to be what goes here. If 1 in every 5 is an apple, what if you've got 20 fruits? 1 in every 5 fruits is an apple, but we've got 20 fruits. We've got a lot more fruits now. So we're going to have more apples. So all you do here is, it's a mystery what happens to the top. But you can see what happens to the bottom. It's usually going to be times, if not divide, but usually times. What happens to 5 to get to 20? 5, 10, 15, 20. I just sung on my fingers and I saw that we times by 4. You just do the same to the top. Times it by 4 as well. You've done equivalent fractions, haven't you? You've done do the same to the bottom as you do to the top. 1 times 4 is 4. So the answer is 4 apples. 20 fruits are in a bowl. 1 in every 5 is an apple. How many apples? 4. We're going to do 2 more of these problems before we move on to ratio. Next one. 15 balls are in a bag. 1 in every 3 is blue. They've told you the they've told you the proportion. We're doing proportion. They tell you the proportion. 1 in every 3 is blue. Problem is, we haven't just got 3. We've got 15. Instead of 3, we've got 15. What happens to 3 to get to 15? What do you times it by? 3, 6, 9, 12, and 15. I counted on my fingers, and my finger said 5. You times it by 5. So times the top by 5 as well. 1 times 5 is 5, and you get 5. How many are blue? 5. If you only had 3 balls, you would only have 1 blue one. But when you've got lots more balls, 15, you have 5 blue ones. Last one of these problems next. 25 sweets are in a pack. 2 in every 5 are red. There is our proportion. 2 in every 5. They tell you it in the question. You just got to find it. So if 2 in every 5 are red, 2 in every 5 sweets are red, how many are red when you've got 25 sweets? So now we're out of 25 instead of being out of 5. What happens to 5 to get to 25? 5, 10, 15, 20, 25? Times by 5, don't you? So if the bottom gets times multiplied by 5, multiply the top by 5 as well. 2 times 5 is 10, and the answer is 10. So if you only had 5 sweets, you'd have 2 red ones. But if you have 25 sweets, you've got a lot more red ones. You've got 10 red sweets. Those are proportion problems. Those problems are a bit more difficult than what we did at the start when we counted all the circles and things. But that's basically proportion for you. We're moving on to ratio next. This is totally different now. We're on ratio instead of proportion, okay? And ratio is a different thing. You know, with proportion, we said things like 2 out of every 5. We don't say it in the same way with ratio. This is a ratio problem. There are 3 blue flowers for every 2 red flowers. What's the ratio? Ratios look different. They look like this. They have these 2 dots in between them, instead of being written like a fraction, okay? So proportions were written as a fraction. Now we're on ratio. It's not written as a fraction. It's written with these 2 dots, with this colon in the middle, okay? It told us the answer to this. There are 3 blue flowers for every 2 red flowers. What's the ratio? Well, 3 against 2. 3 to 2. I might just scribble on top blue and red, because they said 3 blue for every 2 red. And that's a ratio. That's what ratios look like. It can be very, very helpful to do a little total of these and write it over somewhere else. It doesn't have to be written right here, but I've just added them up just because sometimes you need the total. But the main thing is, that's what a ratio looks like. 3 to 2, blue to red, 3 to 2. Let's do another one. There are 5 green cards for every 2 grey cards. What is the ratio? 5 to 2, isn't it? They told you it. 5 green cards for every 2 grey cards. 5 to 2. You need to know what you're talking about, so you might sometimes jot above the numbers what you're talking about. 5 green, 2 grey. Okay? Also can be useful to have a little total. 5 plus 2 is 7. Because you get asked some difficult word problems, and total can be very useful. But that, as I say, that is the ratio. Let's do the next one. There are 2 girls for every 3 boys. Now have a more advanced problem here. If there are 8 girls, how many boys are there? Okay, there's 2 girls for every 3 boys. I'm going to write down the ratio. I like to pop that on top so I know what I'm talking about. There are 2 girls for every 3 boys. But this is not the end. This is not the answer this time, because the question is, if there are 8 girls, how many boys are there? So the girls is going to change to 8. It's usually going to be times this. What do you do to 2 to make it go to 8? It's 2, it's 4, it's 6, and it's 8. I know you don't need your songs in year 6, but I times it by 4. The girls is going to get multiplied by 4. To get 2 to go to 8, you times it by 4. So it's only fair to times the boys by 4 as well. So if I times both these numbers by 4, I'm going to write them underneath. Oh, I'm going to quickly do a total first. 2 plus 3 is 5. But forget about the total for a minute. I'm going to times the girls by 4 and the boys by 4. Why do I times it by 4? Because I can see that's what happens to the girls. I don't know what happens to the boys. It doesn't tell me. But it tells me the girls goes from 2 to 8. So times the girls by 4, you get 8. Times the boys by 4, you get 12. What they wanted was how many boys are there. I'll do a quick total. 8 plus 12 is 20. I don't need the totals in this question. You can ignore the totals in this question. They're for harder questions later, but I just want you to get the hang of adding the 2 numbers to get a total. But we see that the girls went from 2 to 8 when we times it by 4. To be fair, we times the boys by 4 as well. 3 times 4 is 12. The question was how many boys are there? Well, we know it right here. It's 12. That's the answer, 12. They could have asked you how many are in total, and that's when you use the 20. But it was how many boys are there, and it's 12. Let's do another one. There are 4 pens for every 5 pencils. If there are 16 pens, how many pencils are there? First thing I do is write the ratio, 4 to 5. The ratio they give you, 4 pens for every 5. Then I'm going to write pens and pencils on top so I know what I'm talking about. Okay? This is just my method. There's different ways of doing it. But get the ratio that they tell you. They give you a big clue. They give you there are 4 pens for every 5 pencils. I'll do a little total in case I need it. 4 plus 5 is 9. But forget about the total for now. Next it says if there are 16 pens. So we know what happens to the pens. They get changed from 4 to 16. It's going to be times. What do you do to 4 to get to 16? 4, 8, 12, 16. You times it by 4. So the pens gets times by 4 to become 16. You just times the pencils by 4 as well. So let's do the pens. 4 times 4 is 16. And do the pencils. 5 times 4 is 20. That's the new ratio, you could say, when we're trying to work out what happens if there's 4 pens that change to 16. What happens to the pencils? 5 pencils changes to 20. So we times the pens by 4, and we also times the pencils by 4. We might need a little total for some of these problems. You add those 2 up, you get the total. But in this question, the question was how many pencils are there? Always check what the question's asking you at the end. How many pencils are there? Well, there's 20 now. The answer's 20. Let's do another one. There are 3 lions for every 2 tigers. Write down the ratio, 3-2, lions, tigers. You don't have to write the words. I find it very useful. Lions has changed to 15, hasn't it? If there are 15 lions, how many tigers are there? So lions is going to change to 15. What do you do to 3 to get to 15? 3, 6, 9, 12 and 15, you times it by 5. So times the tigers by 5 as well. Times both these numbers by 5 and you get a new ratio. Do you know what it is? I always do the total first, don't I? I forget sometimes I do the total first. Anyway, total's 5. But do you know what it is if you times the lions and the tigers by 5? It's 15 to 10. 3 times 5 is 15. 2 times 5 is 10. And what was the question? How many tigers are there? The answer is 10 tigers. We don't need the total this time. It would be 25, but the answer is 10 tigers. That's why I write tigers, so I know where to find my answer. 10. Let's see what next. We will need these totals one day. Here we go. There are 5 bears for every 3 wolves. If there are 15 bears, how many animals in total? Okay, find a ratio, 5-3, isn't it? Bears to wolves. I prefer to write it on. You don't have to. 5 bears for every 3 wolves. They told us that bit. We haven't done anything yet. We've just copied something they told us. If there are 15 bears, okay, so the bears is going to get changed to 15. You know me, I like to do the total first though, don't I? 5 plus 3 is 8. Just write that somewhere else on the page, not too near the ratio. But as I was saying, the bears get changed to 15. What happens to 5 bears to become 15 bears? 5, 10, 15, you times it by 3. So the bears got times by 3, times the wolves by 3 as well. See, both those numbers got multiplied by 3. We get 15 to 9. But this time they want how many animals in total. That's why we need these totals. 15 plus 9 is 24. This time we're going to want the total 24. That's why I always do it. The answer is 24. Next one. These are really difficult problems here. If you get them, then that's good. There are 3 girls for every 7 boys. Right, write that down. 3 girls for 7 boys. That's what a ratio looks like. You know that now, don't you? If there are 12 girls, so the girls is going to get changed to 12. How many children in total? Oh, let's get the total written down. 3 plus 7 is 10. Total's easy, isn't it? You just add them up and put it over here. But the girls is getting changed to 12. So we can work out what happens to the girls by going from 3 to 12. 3, 6, 9, 12. That's times by 4. Times the boys by 4 as well. So the girls changes to 12. They told us they were changing to 12. We knew that because the girls got times by 12, we'll times the boys by 12 as well. Sorry, I said that wrong, didn't I? We know that the girls got multiplied, got times, you could say, by 4. So the boys gets times by 4 as well. Making that clear, hopefully. 3 times 4 is 12. 7 times 4 is 28. You can add these two, and you'll get the total. They want the total this time. How many children in total? 40. So you've got to know what to give them. Do you want to give them the girl's number, the boy's number, the total number? You've got to read the question carefully to see what it's asking for, because it mixes it up. Could have asked for the boys, but it didn't. It asked for the total. Any more? No, we're done. Thanks for listening. That was ratio and proportion, and I'll see you again next time.